The champagne flutes trembled on Raina Foster's tray as she navigated the glittering ballroom. Her borrowed heels pinched her feet with every step. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across designer gowns and tailored suits that cost more than her rent. She didn't belong here. The Langston art house reeked of old money and newer fortunes. Ice sculptures melted slowly beside auction paddles worth bidding wars. Raina was just hired help, passing drinks to people who wouldn't remember her face. Champagne, she offered, her smile practiced and hollow. A man turned. Navy suit. Sharp jaw. Eyes the color of storm clouds before rain. He didn't look like the others. No smugness. No performance. Just exhaustion wrapped in expensive fabric. Thanks. His voice was low, real. Their eyes held a second too long. Raina's pulse quickened. Hey. He called after her as she turned away. What's your name? I'm just the help. That wasn't the question. She hesitated. Raina. Raina. He tested it like a password. I'm Zayn. Zayn Kesler. The name landed like dropped crystal. She nodded politely and fled before her face could betray recognition. Zayn Kesler. Billionaire. Tech mogul. The man who owned half of Silicon Valley's future. And he'd asked her name. The auction started with a painting. Abstract chaos on canvas, apparently worth a fortune. Bids climbed like fever. 150,000. 200,000. Then, commas breathing, from the back of the room, 500,000. Every head turned. Zayn stood with his paddle raised, expression unreadable. The gavel cracked. Sold to Mr. Zayn Kesler. Raina stared. He hadn't looked at the painting once during bidding. He'd been watching her. Later, hiding in the back hallway with her empty tray, she found him waiting. Leaning against the wall like he had all the time in the world. Thought I lost you, he said. Pretty sure I'm not the one bidding $500,000 on art. His mouth curved. True. But I wasn't looking at the painting. Her breath caught. Are you serious? Dead serious. He stepped closer, not crowding, just present. I have dinner tomorrow night. Boring charity thing. But I need someone to keep me sane. Will you come with me? You're asking me to dinner. I'm asking you to help me survive people who think hedge funds are conversation. I don't own a designer dress. I'll take care of it. Raina laughed, the sound sharp with disbelief. This is insane. Maybe. She should say no. Walk away. Forget the man with storm cloud eyes who looked at her like she mattered. Fine, she heard herself say. But if you're a creep, I'm walking out. Zayn grinned. Fair enough. The next evening, a black car arrived. Inside sat a box with a sleek black dress and a note in neat handwriting, hope you like it. See you at 7. The restaurant was a rooftop. Candlelight and skyline. A table set for 2. Zayn waited in a crisp suit, holding a single white rose. You're breathtaking, he said, offering his hand. Raina's heart hammered. You did all this? He leaned in, close enough she could smell cedar and something darker. You said no designer dress. I figured I'd make up for it. Maybe this wasn't boredom. Maybe he meant it. And just like that, everything changed. Foie gras tasted like butter and regret. Raina kept her expression neutral as she swallowed, refusing to let Zayn see her discomfort. Across the table, he watched her with quiet amusement, his wine glass catching the candlelight. So, he said. What's someone like you doing working at an event like that? Someone like me? Smart. Sharp. You carry yourself like someone who's used to leading, not serving. I needed the paycheck. That's not what I asked. Raina leaned back, the dress suddenly feeling too tight. You don't really want to know why I was there. Try me. The urge to deflect burned in her throat. But something in his gaze held steady, patient. Not pitying. Just listening. I was supposed to be an interior architect, she said finally. Got accepted into a graduate program in Chicago. But my mom got sick. I had to come home. Took care of her for a year. She paused, jaw tightening. After that, everything just stopped. It's hard to go back when you've drained your savings and your portfolio is 3 years old. Zayn didn't offer sympathy. He nodded like the weight of it made sense. You still design? When I can. I've got sketches, concepts. Things no one will ever see. I'd like to. She blinked. Why? Because you said no one would. Something cracked open in her chest. Dangerous and warm. Over the next 3 weeks, Zayn became part of her world in ways she hadn't expected. He didn't just take her to expensive dinners. He showed up at her apartment with coffee and asked to see her sketches. He listened while she explained spatial flow and natural light. He remembered details she'd mentioned in passing. He made her feel seen. But there were moments. Moments when his phone would ring and his entire body would tense. When he'd disappear for hours without explanation. When she'd catch him staring at nothing with that exhausted look from the auction. One night, lying in his penthouse with city lights spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows, she finally asked. What aren't you telling me? Zayn's arm tightened around her. What do you mean? You get tense every time someone mentions Kesler Tech. You avoid talking about work. And sometimes you look at me like you're afraid I'll disappear. Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. My company is bleeding, he said quietly. Has been for 6 months. Bad investments. Worse partnerships. The board wants to sell to a conglomerate that'll gut everything I built. Raina sat up, studying his face. Why didn't you tell me? Because everyone I've ever trusted has wanted something from me. Money. Access. Status. His eyes met hers, raw and vulnerable. You're the first person who looked at me and saw just a man. She kissed him then, slow and deliberate. I'm not going anywhere. His hands cupped her face. Promise? Promise. But promises, she would learn, were made to be broken. The next morning, Zayn's assistant called. An emergency board meeting. He kissed her forehead and left in a rush, leaving Raina alone in his apartment. She shouldn't have looked. But his laptop was open on the desk, screen still glowing. An email thread marked urgent sat at the top of his inbox. Her name caught her eye. Subject, Raina Foster, background check complete. Her blood went cold. She clicked. Detailed financial history. Mother's medical debt. Eviction notices. Graduate program rejection letters. Every private moment of her life, catalogued and analyzed. But it was the final line that shattered her. Recommendation, proceed with acquisition offer. Subject's financial desperation makes her ideal for leverage in Foster Design Company purchase negotiations. Raina's hands shook. Foster Design Company. Her mother's company. The small firm her mom had built from nothing before the cancer took everything. Zayn wasn't falling for her. He was buying her. The door opened. Zayn walked in, saw her face, saw the laptop. Raina, wait. You investigated me. Her voice sounded hollow. You knew everything. My debt. My mother's company. Everything. Let me explain. Was any of it real? Tears burned her eyes. The auction? The dinner? Or was I just part of a business deal? It started that way, he admitted, and the words hit like fists. But it changed. You changed everything. Get away from me. Raina, please. You made me believe you saw me. You made me feel like I mattered. She grabbed her bag, vision blurring. But I was just another acquisition. She ran. And Zayn, for all his billions, couldn't buy back what he'd just lost. Raina didn't go home. She went to the only place that still felt like her mother's. The abandoned office space where Foster Design Company used to breathe life into blueprints and dreams. Dust covered everything. Her mother's desk. The drafting tables. Sketches still pinned to corkboards, yellowed with time. She sank to the floor and finally let herself break. Her phone buzzed. Zayn. Again. Please. Just let me explain. It's not what you think. She turned it off. 3 days passed in a blur. Raina stayed with her roommate, ignored 17 calls, and tried to remember who she was before storm cloud eyes and rooftop dinners. Then the letter arrived. Law firm letterhead. Heavy paper that screamed money. Notice of acquisition, Foster Design Company. Her hands trembled as she read. Kesler Tech had purchased her mother's company. All assets, intellectual property, and naming rights. Effective immediately. And there, at the bottom, a handwritten note. The company is yours. No strings. No conditions. I'm sorry I made you doubt yourself. Z. Raina stared at the papers until the words blurred. He'd given her back her mother's legacy. But the anger still burned. She showed up at Kesler Tech headquarters at 8 a.m., security badge and fury propelling her past assistants and concerned receptionists. Zayn's office was all glass and steel, overlooking the city like a kingdom. He stood at the window, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. You can't buy forgiveness, she said. He turned. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. I know. Then why? Because you were right. I made you a transaction. He crossed to her, stopping just out of reach. But somewhere between the background check and falling asleep next to you, I forgot I was supposed to be calculating. I just wanted you to stay. So you lied. I withheld the truth. Different crime. Same damage. Raina's throat tightened. Why my mother's company? Because it's the only thing I could give you that might matter more than my apology. His voice cracked. Because you gave up your dreams to save her, and I wanted to give you a reason to dream again. She wanted to hate him. Needed to. I don't know if I can trust you. I know. I don't know if this is real or just guilt. It's real. He stepped closer. It's so real it terrifies me. I've spent 20 years building walls, Raina. You walked through them like they were made of paper. Her hand moved before her brain caught up, fingers brushing his jaw. If you ever lie to me again, I'm gone. No second chances. I'll take that deal. They rebuilt slowly. Carefully. Raina moved into her mother's old office and started taking clients. Zayn fought his board, refusing to sell Kesler Tech even as the losses mounted. They learned each other again, this time without secrets. But the world doesn't forgive easily. 2 months later, a woman appeared in Raina's office. Elegant. Cold. A diamond ring the size of a marble catching the light. You must be the designer. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. I'm Natasha Volkov. Zayn's fiancée. Raina's world tilted. Excuse me? Oh, he didn't mention me. Natasha settled into a chair uninvited. We've been engaged for 3 years. On and off, you know how it is. But his company needs my family's connections to survive. It's all very civilized. You're lying. Am I? She slid a phone across the desk. Photos. Zayn and Natasha at galas. At dinners. At a private island. All timestamped within the last 6 months. Including 2 weeks ago. He's very good at compartmentalizing, Natasha continued. But don't feel bad. You're not the first distraction. Just the most persistent. Raina's hands went numb. I'll make this simple. Walk away, or I'll make sure Foster Design Company never gets another client in this city. My family owns half the real estate development firms here. One word from me and you're finished. She stood, smoothing her skirt. Think about it. After she left, Raina sat in the silence, staring at the phone screen. The photos were real. The timestamps were real. And Zayn had never mentioned a fiancé. When he called that evening, his voice warm and familiar, she answered with ice in her veins. We need to talk. About what? About Natasha. The silence on his end told her everything. Raina, let me explain. How many more secrets, Zayn? How many more lies before I'm allowed to know who you really are? She's not my fiancé. Not really. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. Her voice broke. I'm tired of being the only one fighting for something real. I am fighting. Then why didn't you tell me about her? Because I didn't think she mattered anymore. But she does, Raina whispered. Doesn't she? You need her family's money to save your company. And I'm just the girl you bought to feel less empty. That's not fair. Neither is any of this. She hung up. This time, she didn't cry. She just sat in her mother's chair, surrounded by sketches and dreams, and wondered when she'd become so good at loving men who treated her like a variable in an equation. Zayn showed up at her office at midnight. Rain hammered the windows. His suit was soaked, hair plastered to his forehead. I ended it, he said. The engagement. The deal with her family. All of it. Raina didn't move from her drafting table. Just like that? Just like that. He stepped inside, dripping water onto her mother's old floors. I told the board I'd rather lose the company than lose you. That's a pretty speech. It's the truth. She finally looked at him. Really looked. He was shaking. From cold or fear, she couldn't tell. Natasha said you've been seeing her for months. She had photos. Timestamps. Business dinners. Board pressure. Her family's been pushing the merger since last year. Zayn's voice was raw. I kept her at arm's length, but I should have told you she existed. I was a coward. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid you'd leave. And I couldn't lose you. Not again. Raina stood slowly. What happens now? You lose your company. Your life's work. I build something new. With what money? I don't know. He laughed, sharp and bitter. For the first time in 20 years, I don't have a plan. I just know I can't do this without you. She crossed to him, stopping close enough to feel the cold radiating from his soaked clothes. You're an idiot. I know. You're also the most brilliant man I've ever met. Raina. She kissed him. Hard. Desperate. Tasting rain and regret and something that felt like a second chance. We'll figure it out, she whispered against his mouth. Together. For 2 weeks, they existed in a bubble. Zayn moved into her apartment. They worked side by side, him fielding calls about Kesler Tech's dissolution, her building Foster Design back from ashes. It was messy and uncertain and completely theirs. Then Marcus arrived. Zayn's former business partner. The man who'd helped him build Kesler Tech from a dorm room idea into an empire. I have a solution, Marcus said over drinks at a bar too loud for secrets. Investor group. Foreign money. They'll buy Kesler Tech, keep you as CEO, and we all walk away rich. Zayn frowned. Why would they do that? Because I vouched for you. Told them you're worth the risk. What's the catch? Marcus smiled. You sign over Foster Design as collateral. Just a formality. Insurance. They get your company back on track, you buy it back, everyone wins. Raina's stomach dropped. Absolutely not. It's the only way, Marcus insisted. Zayn loses everything otherwise. His reputation, his life's work. This way, he gets a second chance. Zayn looked at her. I'm not signing anything without your agreement. Then don't sign, she said. We'll find another way. But that night, sleepless at 3 a.m., doubt crept in. Zayn had given up his engagement, his company's safety, everything for her. And she was holding him back from saving what he'd built. The papers sat on the counter. Foster Design Company as collateral. Temporary. Just insurance. She signed. In the morning, she told him. I did it. Zayn went white. What? I signed. Marcus's deal. Your company needs this. Raina, no. His hands shook as he grabbed the papers. You shouldn't have done that. You gave up everything for me. Let me give something back. He stared at the signature, and something in his expression made her blood run cold. What's wrong? Marcus wouldn't offer this deal. Not without a bigger angle. Zayn was already on his phone, dialing. Something's not right. But it was too late. By noon, the truth detonated like a bomb. The investor group didn't exist. Marcus had fabricated everything. He'd used the signed papers to transfer Foster Design ownership to a shell corporation. He owned it now. And he'd already sold it to a development firm that planned to gut it for parts. Zayn found Marcus at his office. Raina followed. Why? Zayn's voice was lethal. We built this together. You were my friend. Marcus leaned back, unrepentant. You were always going to burn. I just made sure I didn't burn with you. And her company? He glanced at Raina. Nice bonus. Should cover my losses nicely. I trusted you. Your first mistake. Marcus stood. Business lesson, Zayn. The only person you can trust is yourself. You forgot that when you fell for the help. Zayn lunged. Raina grabbed his arm, holding him back even as her own rage threatened to consume her. He's not worth it. But the damage was done. Foster Design, her mother's legacy, was gone. Outside, in the parking lot, Zayn turned to her with devastation in his eyes. This is my fault. I brought him into our lives. No. Raina's voice was steady even as her heart shattered. I signed those papers. I made the choice. To save me. Because I love you. The words hung in the air, raw and honest and too late to save anything. Zayn pulled her close, and they stood there in the fading light, two people who'd lost everything but each other. What do we do now? She whispered. I don't know. His voice broke. But I'm not losing you too. That's the only thing I'm sure of. As they drove away, Raina looked back at the building that had housed her mother's dreams. Her dreams. Sometimes love demanded sacrifice. She just hadn't realized how much it would cost. 6 months later, Raina stood in an empty warehouse in Brooklyn. Exposed brick. High ceilings. Light streaming through industrial windows. It was perfect. You're sure about this? Zayn asked beside her, his hand warm in hers. I'm sure. They'd spent the months after Marcus's betrayal rebuilding. Not their companies. Themselves. Zayn had walked away from Kesler Tech entirely, letting it collapse rather than fight for something that had cost them so much. Raina had mourned Foster Design, then accepted it was gone. And somewhere in the grief, they'd found something neither expected. Freedom. New start, Raina said, turning to face him. We design it together this time. No secrets. No shortcuts. What do we call it? She smiled. Something honest. They launched Storm and Foster Design 6 weeks later. A hybrid firm combining architectural vision with tech integration. Zayn's connections in Silicon Valley, despite everything, still opened doors. Raina's talent spoke for itself. Their first client was a nonprofit building sustainable housing. The fee barely covered expenses. But standing in the completed space, watching families move into homes that felt like hope, Raina finally understood what her mother had been building all along. Not a company. A legacy. One evening, as they worked late in their new office, Raina's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Miss Foster? A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. This is Chen and Associates. We represent several parties interested in the Foster Design intellectual property. Are you aware it's currently for sale? Raina's breath caught. What? The shell corporation holding the rights has entered bankruptcy. Assets are being liquidated. We thought you'd want to know. After she hung up, Zayn looked up from his laptop. What's wrong? Foster Design. The rights are for sale. Marcus's company went under. Understanding dawned in his eyes. How much? I didn't ask. We could buy it back. Raina leaned against the desk, considering. The logical choice was obvious. Reclaim her mother's company. Restore what was stolen. But looking around their office, at the projects scattered across tables, at Zayn bent over sketches with the intensity she'd fallen in love with, she realized something. No. No. It's not mine anymore. That company belonged to my mother. To who I was before. She crossed to him, framing his face with her hands. This is ours. What we built from nothing. What we chose. You're not angry? After everything Marcus took? I'm furious. She smiled. But I'm also free. He took the name, the assets. He couldn't take what mattered. Zayn pulled her into his lap, arms tight around her waist. What matters? This. Us. The fact that we're still standing. We almost didn't make it. But we did. Later that night, in their apartment overlooking the city that had witnessed every betrayal and triumph, Zayn asked the question that had been building for months. Marry me. Raina turned from the window. What? No ring. No rooftop. No grand gesture. He stood, crossing to her. Just me, asking you to choose this. Us. Every day. Zayn. I know I'm damaged. I know I've made mistakes that almost destroyed us. But I also know that every good thing in my life started the night you handed me champagne and looked at me like I was just a man. His voice roughened. Marry me, Raina. Not because it makes sense or because we've figured everything out. Marry me because you love me anyway. She kissed him instead of answering, pouring 6 months of grief and healing and hope into it. Yes, she whispered. Always yes. The wedding was small. A courthouse ceremony with her roommate and Zayn's assistant as witnesses. No expensive gowns or charity galas. Just 2 people who'd lost everything and found what mattered in the wreckage. Years later, Storm and Foster Design would become what neither of them had planned. Not the biggest firm or the richest. But the most honest. They built homes for people who needed them. Created spaces that healed rather than impressed. Taught workshops for kids who looked like Raina once did, with dreams too big for their circumstances. And sometimes, late at night when the city was quiet, Raina would remember the girl in borrowed heels, balancing champagne and fear. The billionaire with storm cloud eyes who'd seen her when no one else did. They'd both been looking for salvation in the wrong places. They found it in each other instead. Zayn found her on their office rooftop one evening, watching the sunset paint the city gold and crimson. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "The auction. That first night. Regrets?" She leaned back against him, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. "Not a single one. Even the hard parts? Especially those. They made us real." He turned her in his arms, and in his eyes she saw their entire story. The lies and truth. The betrayal and forgiveness. The sacrifice that led to something neither could have built alone. "I love you," he said. "I know." They stood there as the sun dipped below the skyline, two people who'd learned that happy endings aren't about perfect beginnings. They're about choosing to stay when staying is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And choosing, every single day, to build something worth keeping. The end.